2016-31 Panas Papapanu and Evanthea Lala, 20 Lewis Road. And 8th will be 2016-29 Eileen Fisher's, 116, 118 Main Street. So that, Sarah, is everybody up to date on taxes?
Yes.
Okay. Also, we received them kind of late this month for the meeting from December, so I don't know if anyone's had a chance to take a look at them. I haven't really. I just breezed through them, so maybe for next month. George,
I did.
Did you have any comments on it?
I did.
And did you send them out to Sarah? Okay, very good. So the rest of us will then take a look and and we'll get them to you for next month.
He did. He must have had a reason.
With that, we'll take the first item then. Devinder Makan, Peterbont Road. This is a public hearing for a final subdivision approval. Is anyone here for that matter? No? Doug or Ed, did you have any comments on the final subdivision? Okay. I think we had received the final subdivision plat and we had a resolution prepared. And unless there are any comments from any members of the board, I'll read the resolution.
One comment, this is an approval of the subdivision of the land, not what's being built on.
Correct, this is not site plan approval. They have to come back for site plan approval for the actual house on the site. Okay, so this is matter number 2016-16. Village of Irvington Planning Board decision, whereas in July 2016, Uni Equities Providers Corp., care of Devinder Makan, applicant, applied for subdivision approval to subdivide a 5.46 acre parcel at the end of Peterbont Road into 2 lots, one comprising 2.24 acres, to be developed as a single-family residence, and one comprising 3.22 acres to be conveyed to the Village of Irvington. And whereas this subdivision is being sought in compliance with an agreement between Uni Equities Providers Corp. And the Village of Irvington dated March 6, 2016, and said agreement requires that the 2 lots created by the subdivision be subject to a declaration of covenants and restrictions, which is to be filed with the Westchester County Clerk. And whereas the Planning Board held a public hearing on the subdivision on July 6th, October 5th, and December 7th, 2016, and whereas on December 7th, 2016, the Planning Board as lead agency determined that the proposed subdivision will not have any adverse impacts on the environment and therefore issued a negative declaration under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And whereas on December 7th, 2016, the Planning Board granted preliminary subdivision approval to that plat entitled Subdivision Map Prepared for Makan Development, subject to several conditions, all of which were satisfied. And whereas on December 7th, 2016, the Westchester County Department of Health approved the subdivision and endorsed the plat. And whereas on January 4th, 2017, the Planning Board held a public hearing on the final plat, now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Board grants final subdivision approval to the subdivision reflected on the plat entitled Subdivision Map Prepared for Makan Development, subject to payment of all outstanding taxes and fees. And Sarah, I understand all the taxes and fees have been paid up to date. Okay. Any comments on anything in the resolution? No? Can I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Anybody got a pen? There's usually a big pile of pens here, but not tonight.
Ah, there's where. You got your own special.
Oh, I like that.
You get that.
Sure, that's the sign one.
Before you leave, you want to have to sign a block.
I think we're going to hold off on that. I think Maria wanted to take one last before we finally sign it. I spoke to her this afternoon.
No. Tax issue that was involved.
You can call me. I mean,
Sarah?
I can stop on the way home. Okay, thank you. Next item is 2016-41, Cameron and Alana Lewis, 41D North Broadway.
John Malone, Ferguson Malone Architects, representing Cameron and Alana Lewis. This is a project for 2 small additions to an existing Georgian house in Matheson Park. We received comments from Doug earlier today. I can go through the site plan briefly with you. One of the additions is to the west side of the building here, and the goal of that addition was to make the master suite larger, more than modern master suite, so the second level is enclosed. That includes a master bath, and the lower level is an open porch, which is sort of typical on Georgian style, actually facing the sunset side. And then here's a single-story addition that is on top of the footprint of an existing single-story addition. So there was a back porch, like a back porch that had been enclosed at some point. This addition is slightly larger and is playing the role of breakfast room and mudroom. So the changes are relatively minor.
I'm sorry, you said there's a single-story addition on top of a single
Oh,
story.
not on top, in the footprint of the existing addition. So
They're both single-story.
yes, they're both single-story. So the single-story addition that's there, sorry, that's not right, is being demolished and replaced with a new one in approximately the same, slightly larger. Yes.
Perhaps you can just describe to where you're going for the variance.
Oh, and so the first item on the list here is we need a variance request for the portion of the addition here that is extending into the front yard. So the existing building, where it is already extends into the front yard, a small portion of our addition is making that non-conformance worse. So that's where we would be asking for the variance. Other than that, we will most likely be asking for variances to leave this existing shed in place. I have not spoken to the client about whether they care about the piece of flagstone. I'm assuming that they don't. So that may not be. And then we'll be pursuing probably a wetland permit for the existing stuff that's in the wetlands. So the owner just bought the property, so they're going to utilize whatever is.
Did you mention, John, that you need a variance for the side yard setback too?
The side, yes, right, so the shed is in the side
Oh, that's-
yard.
okay.
The shed's in the side yard. This piece of flagstone, I don't know what it must be, a footing or foundation for some building that's not there anymore.
And then I think, let's see, the Environmental Conservation Board also made notice that their comments are, this is an application for site development plan approval for the construction of 2-story addition to an existing single-family residence. Landscaping plan should be submitted for the replacement of the trees being removed and the swing set and stone barbecue located in the wetlands buffer, and wetlands should be relocated. Those are undocumented, those items that are in the wetlands.
That's
Right.
correct.
Do they need to be in the wetlands? I mean, is it a good idea?
This stone barbecue is probably, I don't know, it's got to be the same age as the house. So I don't know if you guys want us to not touch it or to, I was thinking it may be less disruptive rather than excavate and pull the thing out, is to just leave it. It's sort of overgrown, left in there. I don't think it's affecting.
Jan, do you have any comment about that?
Do I need to come up?
Yes.
Sure.
Jan Blair, Environmental Conservation Board. It is a wet area down there. It is undocumented. We're just concerned about if there's any impact on the area. So.
I mean, is it used?
It's like a ruin is what it kind of is. So I don't know, like, do you leave the ruin in place, or do you go in and excavate and pull the ruin out? I'm not sure what is more disruptive. I mean, we have a wetlands consultant that we use for the delineation. We can ask them what they think we should do,
Why don't you do that? But my concern would just be if it's going to be something that's going to be used.
Oh, right, if it's going to
regularly,
be,
then it should be
we
taken
weren't
out of the-
proposing to refurbish it. I don't know.
Is there a path that goes down to it?
No, it's really like, there's sort of a water course. If you guys have been on the aqueduct there, it's like a very informal water course, and this thing, I'm not sure when it was appropriate to have a barbecue down there, like even 100 years ago. I'm not really sure why the thing is there.
Well, is there any blockage to that, to the
Yes, yeah, I mean,
drainage pipe that goes underneath the aqueduct?
No, that's all
might
there
help
over
cause
here.
The wetlands there?
yeah.
The only thing that would be concerning to us would be if in future, if they sell the house
Yeah.
and someone else moves in, then they might decide to build a patio and make it larger and have an outdoor kitchen. So I know it's a little further away from the house than an outdoor kitchen you want to have, but still, if the next owner, and then we'd set a precedent and say, well, it's been there for how many years? So that's our concern. It is a very wet area. It could be flooded. It is flooded from time to time.
Yeah.
I've seen it. It does flood from time to time. So if they're not using it, it might be a recommendation to remove it if you're not going to be using it, or move it closer to the house.
But, you know, I'm fine with that. I'm just not sure if removing it causes more damage than leaving it in place. I don't know what
I
that.
think they'd be careful about moving it.
Right.
Just,
Right.
yeah, and even, I don't know, would it be okay if you just left the base in place, but took out everything above the base? Or you just, I guess if you go in that.
I mean,
take the thing
we'll
out.
do whatever.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
we're in the mode, like, we'll do whatever.
Yeah,
You're adding
look at taking it out.
You're
Yeah.
adding more pervious soil if you take the whole thing out.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
which would be better.
Have to be better for it.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's, you know, part of the thing is to have no excavation in the wetlands area, no, you know, so I'm not.
Just pick up the stones.
But I think you can replant in the wetlands too, though, once you. once
You could,
do that.
I think there, I'm not sure that there's an issue, like, I'm not sure there's, we'll go whichever way you guys want us to.
Make it go away.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Do that.
Okay.
I think that would be good. I don't think it's going to have much of an impact because there's no foundation.
Okay. I think for the swing set, I haven't talked to the client about it because we just received the stuff today. I think they probably want to keep the swing set in place. Usually with play areas like that, when the kids grow older, they, you know, stop being used. Right now, that's a lawn area, you know, I don't think that has a wetlands impact to the extent, I mean, you could look at the wetlands delineation does not go as far as that, and I think the flood area is really in that area. I'm not sure, that one is only in the buffer, it's not actually in the wetlands. So, I mean, I'll speak to them about that. But we may,
Again, it might be though that the next family, again, moving in and starts being more active in using that, and then you're
Right.
within the buffer. So it might be.
Right. So-
I mean, they have plenty of room back there. Why can't you just move it to the north and take it out of the buffer
right,
completely?
well, what I would ask is if I just haven't spoken to them about it, so I'll speak to them about it and see how they want to proceed with that, because I guess the alternative would be to ask for a wetlands permit for it and then go through the process of, you know, finding some way to mitigate its
Yeah.
location there.
And the other thing too is you just might speak to either an engineer, a civil engineer, or a stormwater engineer, or a landscape architect about the soil and erosion control methods that you're showing, the silt fence around the entire area there. A lot of times that really isn't effective. You have a lot of silt fence that's going downhill. It's not going to have any impact at all. And what it may also do is just channel everything into one location.
couple of lines.
Yes,
Start.
yes. Really, I think in the future, you should take a look at that, getting an LA or a PE to look at that. Or
Right.
even someone who's certified in soil and erosion control, which there are people like that, and just look at, you probably could get away with less silt fence back there, but it'll be more
Effective.
effective
Right.
in what it's accomplishing.
Right.
Okay, so take a look at that. And then I think with that, I think you can
Yeah,
go.
most of the other details, the 7 through
Yeah.
14 are going to be around the civil stuff.
Right,
So.
I think if you respond to all this, I think at this point you can go to the ZBA with this.
Okay.
All right, any other, right, is everybody okay with that? George? Okay.
No.
Well, they're going to the ZBA with the thought though that the barbecue is going to come out of the wetlands and that you're going to look at moving the children's play set out of the buffer. Those are the two main issues. I mean, the structure you have in the side yard setback and the front yard setback, yeah, I don't think that's as big an issue for me, I don't think. But I think the two in the wetland and the buffer are. All right, so you're going to have to.
Yeah, we can submit a revised thing to the, you know, when we submit to the design work on Monday, we can indicate that once I've talked to them.
And then maybe what I'll do is I'll send a note to the ZBA too, letting them know that we discussed this and that this is one of the recommendations of the planning board. Okay? next item is 2016-40, Chris and Sharon Callahan, 23 Matheson Park.
John
Oh,
Malone,
okay.
Ferguson Malone Architecture, representing Chris and Sharon Callahan. So this project, there are interior modifications to the house, but the focus for the planning is the relocation of the outdoor space from the south side that is very crowded, basically to the north side. So there's a new patio being proposed so that they could be an eating area that's adjacent to the kitchen exit, and a fire pit and a hot tub located there. And then part of the project is to relocate the existing driveway in order to accommodate that change. Right now the driveway moves across the face of the house, so there's no green space around the house. So, the items that we received from HOD, the coverage the new coverage that's being proposed in this area, we're eliminating the coverage that was in this area over here and relocating that. So there's actually a net reduction in coverage, but we're required, because the project is over coverage, we're required to get a variance for the relocation. So we'll be going to planning board for that. Zoning board, sorry.
Were there any previous variances for any of the overage on the coverage?
I don't believe so. I think it pre-existed the reduction of the coverage.
Yeah. You didn't see anything else? Any comments?
Yeah, that's a lot of driveway. Where does the drainage go?
The drainage goes to a stormwater area here that I think there's about six foot diameter dry wells, I think 4 foot deep by 6. There's about 6 of them here. And the current driveway is collected by a strip drain in this location. So that strip drain is going to be reinstalled in the same location as it comes down.
But those existing drainage basins, I mean, you said the driveway is going to be bigger. Is it?
Oh, it's not bigger, just relocated. So the driveway now is going in this way, and there's it's going across the face. So it's really just moving the driveway over so that you could get.
John, you're gonna
Intuitively,
verify
I think the driveway is going to be a little bit.
Oh, right. It's
The
going to
new
be
part is
a
gonna
little
be-
bit bigger. So we have a note from Doug, and we'll get our civil engineer to determine whether the impact can be handled within the existing driveway, or else you'll have to increase stormwater mitigation. Yeah.
Yeah, we asked that he verify that the change doesn't impact the stormwater.
Yeah, because it's moved, it looks bigger.
Because an arc has to be longer than a straight line.
This is true.
What kind of screening are you doing?
We have landscape columns.
Where's the houses to the north? Are there?
There is a significant screening to the north already from these large.
Microphone, please.
There is significant screening to the north already from an existing high tree line.
Okay.
But there is additional screening going in around the new patio area. So we're showing, hydrangea, and there's some larger things here though. Where are they? Where's the call out for them? Sorry. What are the large ones? Oh, they're gold spire ginkgos, I guess.
You recognize those.
The call out is,
Steak.
yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to the landscape architect about that. But
God
we
bless
do have, there is sort of ample screening
All
at
right.
different levels around the whole perimeter. But I think the screening to the property is going to have more to do. This has more to do with screening this from the driveway. The property screening is kind of already in place.
It's pretty dense.
In moving the driveway to where you're moving it to, is there any trees or vegetation? I haven't.
No, there's no tree takedowns. There's some regrading. There's some regrading along this area, but there's existing trees that are below 6 inches. There's some small little things there, but they're not. There's a vegetable garden in this area right now.
I see.
Yeah, the vegetable garden is what's being, right.
All the driveway runoff is being directed to that drainage.
There's also an existing drain inlet up here
Okay.
that collects the upper section, and then this collects, and this will be curved, so we should be able to collect it.
That upper section, that also gets over there?
Yeah, this is also going, everything's going down.
It's quite a distance.
Also, our consultant, landscape architect, had a death in her family, and so she was not able to respond to any of the applications this month. But she may get back to you then later on. Like we were talking about some of those plantings, they may not be appropriate for.
Right, and I was
hot
thinking
tub
she
or-
might make comments about
Yeah.
natives and stuff, so I should prepare the client for that.
Okay. Any other comments from any of the board members? Any comments from anyone in the public? No? Okay. Any problem with going to the ZBA on this one? Because I think, what do you, pardon me?
What are we doing with the pool equipment? There's two locations.
The pool equipment is located, right now, we have it located here, so my thought is if we're gonna go to ZBA for coverage, that we would ask for a variance for the pool equipment at this
Yeah.
location.
Well,
On the other plan.
there's a
Yeah,
conflict on the
I
plan.
saw that with the,
One is against the house and the other one it's near the driveway. Yeah, it's on sheets AO.12 and then on SP-01. Yeah, on that sheet, yeah, you have it. The pool equipment is against the house, in the upper right-hand corner. The corner of the house?
spa equipment.
Right.
Well, that would be that could be an alternate location that wouldn't be in the side yard setback.
And that's a more appropriate location, I think.
The issue is that I think that was an error though, because it is actually right at the end of the existing porch that they use. So that this is a front porch, and to locate it there, I think it would have both a visual impact to the front of the house and also noise impact.
Okay, well then how close is the house? Or the house is to the north, I guess it would be, yes.
This is that light blue, sort of large French-looking thing with the driveway and the garage is to this side of it. So it is relatively far away, and the distance is not that close, but it is the service and driveway side of the house, so it's not doesn't have a peak impact, I think.
It's also uphill. So.
Earl, if you're going to speak, you need to speak to the microphone.
Are there two houses there? Is there a second lot there to the right?
This lot is another house where that house is located on this portion of the lot. So this is wooded side yard to the adjacent house. So this is very far away. This one, I think, again, with the script, there wouldn't be any visual impact to the equipment, and I think the equipment would be quiet enough that there wouldn't be any noise impact from where it is. And also the use on this side, this isn't the public outdoor part of the house, it's the garage part. So, I mean, we could provide more information to the zoning board when we show them that. I think, we had looked at the spa equipment all the way up here. I think there's an issue with distance and height. This would have been the better place, because even having the spa equipment so close to the spa is problematic.
Well, what's to the south of that house then? Is that the school property?
This is school property.
Well, that might be a better location for it then.
Moving the spa equipment.
Yeah, because you have the fields at the back of.
Yeah, I'm not sure
the school.
it's that feasible to relocate. I don't know what the piping situation is, like what the feasible distance is. We can look into that.
Well, this is all new, right?
Yeah.
None of this exists.
None of this exists, but I think the distance from the spa location to the equipment, there's a certain limit on it, like in a pool environment.
Well, my concern then is just really, what's the distance to the houses to the north? I'd like to see what that really is before we make a determination on this then.
Okay. Could we go to the zoning board? What would we go for?
Well, is that,
With,
well, you have a coverage issue.
we have the coverage variance that we need approval on really before.
You have coverage, you have
Pool location.
pool equipment in or out of the, I need to know, the reason I asked it was to include it in the design letter.
That's,
Yeah, but it's also sort
So
of,
this,
a procedural thing here. It's like,
It's cardboard.
Yeah, you should
you
have.
should really
should have
come
a
here
site
with
plan
an intent,
inch-
not like it could be this,
Yeah.
it could be that. That way, the
Well,
zoning
our
board.
intent is to put it there. My intent coming here today was to ask for a variance for the pool equipment in that location because we didn't think it had a negative impact on the adjacent property.
Well, then I think if you wanted to put it in that location, I think I'd like to see some screening around it. Not screening necessarily in terms of view, but in terms of noise reduction.
Okay.
Because I don't know, I have no idea what is, do you have any information on the pool equipment what's the
That's what I
decibel
mean.
level
We
that's-
could get you,
that
like,
puts
we
out?
could get you, decibel levels of the pool equipment, and we could get you, what I would point out, though, is that, you wouldn't, the pool equipment, we would want to have quiet because it's so close to the outdoor space right
It's in
here.
your best interest in the.
Yeah,
Right. So why don't you do this? Why don't you just, if that's what your intent is,
Right.
then take away the other intent and don't bring it up.
Right.
Okay, because that way this is what you're coming to ask
Right, that's
for.
why I said, I think that other one was shown on that drawing as error, so I think that's where I'd like to.
And then doesn't this have to come back with site plan?
There's still some open issues on the drainage that are pretty significant. Calculations for the existing system and proposed additionals.
Okay, but there's no variance issue for the pool equipment as it stands now.
Yes,
There is.
The pool equipment in this location would require
A variance. That's the reason I asked the question.
Then I think that, there's another one that
Why
I
don't you
think
hold on
it's,
to next month? This way we get it right.
all right. So I was gonna say too, we could send a recommendation or note to the ZBA about this, also saying that, if that's where you're going to put it, then our suggestion would be
Yeah,
that you have some noise abating.
It is where it is.
This is where he wants it.
And that's
Yeah, this is where we want-
then
this is where we want it.
We want to see some, noise abating equipment around it.
or information as to what the
Showing
noise
what the
impact would
decibel
be.
level of it is and how it relates to other types of equipment.
Right.
And this is a hot tub, not a swimming pool, so we're not talking
Right.
big equipment.
It's not.
But does it have to run?
It has more motors.
It has what?
It has more motors, bigger motors,
That's true, it has the pumps, bigger pumps,
bigger pumps.
I
and
think
a heating element.
hence the hot part.
What about the exhaust from it? Is it, what fuel is it?
They're basically gas fired, they're typically gas fired. Electric is so expensive that they're. I mean, I think if I could provide, to the zoning board, I could provide, if you guys give a recommendation, I'll provide zoning board the equipment spec.
It's just another thing for us to review before it gets to zoning board.
Right.
Instead of doing the ARB stuff.
All right. If no one has any other concerns, I think we'll let it go to the ZBA at this point, but we'll have to come back, and I think also we'll just make the note to the ZBA though regarding the sound.
The sound and the landscaping around it.
Right.
Right, so both sound and visual.
Yeah, make sure, right.
Okay. One of the items that we had on here, and actually, what was the request for a visual impact analysis because it's in the view preservation district. I don't know if you guys want us to really pursue that. I think this is not going to have a view. You have the aqueduct right here to the east. This portion of the property of the neighbors is, there is no house here. And actually the church property is so.
What you're putting in is basically a patio,
Right.
the hot tub, and hot tub equipment.
Right, and there's a pergola shown, which has some height to it, but I don't believe it's anywhere near the height of the grade that's gone up.
Do you have any elevations of the proposed equipment that we could see?
I mean, we have.
Is it lower than the existing structure?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. The structure is 3 stories high, and the pergola is just, 1 story. So, and I think, it wouldn't have any visual impact from this side because this building is so high. And as you come this way, this building, is already blocking views to the east. So the only potential impact we would have, would be a very small sliver here. And then I think the grade is, much higher than that. So I just want to make sure we can address that. Now this is the pergola, which is shown at about 8 feet.
Yeah, this has really nothing to do with you and the way you explain it, but this has come up several times, and I remember specifically on a project, something like this, and then all of a sudden it was built, and it did have an impact, and the neighbors kind of addressed that thereafter. So I would request that you at least have a memo with little photographs showing that this is what you believe it isn't.
Yeah, I mean, we can do, and that's what we do
Yeah.
typically, we do the, we can
Well, you don't
do
do
that,
the
just bring it up.
full-blown, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you're gonna have to come back anyway for the
Right,
final
right.
site plan, to have that.
Okay, we'll bring that.
I know it would be inappropriate to go back to the other project, but there was a request for that on the previous project, so we're just going to provide that. Just
On both of them. Okay? All right, thank you. The next item is 2016-39, Linda Boff, 6 Power Street Road.
Yes or no?
Good evening. I'm Troy Wojciechowski, engineer for the applicants Linda and Regis Boff. Project location is 6 Ballaser Drive. The project consists of the installation of an in-ground pool, adjacent patio, and upgrades to an existing patio, as well as to an existing retaining wall. As far as some of the specs for the project, the property is a little over 30,000 square feet. It's in the 1F40 residential zoning district. The in-ground pool, as you can see in blue, with my very professional coloring job. I actually let my daughter do that tonight. You can see in blue here, it's a regular shape, 700 square foot pool. This is the surrounding stone patio, 480 square feet, plus or minus. Stone steps up the hill to a small upper stone patio of about 84 square feet. The existing patio is it's bluestone and it's kind of in dated shape. So what we're going to do with that is basically resurface it with a concrete stone surface patio, basically to match the rest of the new patio. As you can see, there's a grade differential. This is the top of the hill. So there are stairs that come up to the pool, which is basically built into the hillside, and we'll show you a couple rendered site plans that show that a little better. Stormwater is going to be managed in underground recharge system here. Overflows for larger storms will run through a pipe out to the street. This plan also shows our proposed construction entrance, which we actually can't use the driveway because of the grade of the driveway and retaining walls and things like that. So we're actually going to come up this way and sneak around the north side of the house. We're proposing landscaping integral with the pool and patio area, but more importantly, we've shown arborvitae evergreen screening in this location here, as well as this location. For the most part, the home in this location is proximate to the property, but there is significant existing vegetation and trees that will help with the screening. And actually, during the summer, I'd be surprised if they really have any clear views to the pool area. We located the pool in this area actually to avoid significant trees that are actually up in these areas up here. This project's going to require the removal of 3 trees that we included with our application. Those trees are really not in particularly good shape. And I'm sorry, Steve Griggs from Steve Griggs Design is here to answer questions about the project as well. Steve's group actually did the detailed layout of the project. So we have 3 trees that are basically, a couple of them are growing out of boulders on the hillside, And then we have a tree that we're proposing in this location near the stormwater treatment area that's leaning towards the house and needs to come down. Let me show you the more exciting picture that you'll probably enjoy.
Before you get off this picture, the access road for construction,
Yeah.
it appears it's going directly over the stormwater discharge area, or am I incorrect?
Yes, and we
Well,
have
won't that
this-
compact the soil and reduce the percolation if you run concrete trucks over it?
Yeah, well, probably what we'll end up showing, you're right, the way we depict it right now, it turns and goes right over that area. We do have notes on the plans that say construction traffic can't go over that area, so looking at the graphics.
How long will that
on here-
last?
What's that?
How long will that last when the guy's coming in with his truck?
Well, what we'll do is we'll protect it with a fence, orange construction fence or something like that. A barrier we can work out with the
Is there
village
room
engineer.
to cut around it?
Yes, yeah, there's room. We can get around this side over here. Because there will be some regrading, as shown on the grading plans as well, so we can work around that. So this is a view, can you see that okay? This is a view looking from the house into the backyard, so you can see the steps. Actually, it's a slightly different arrangement. We come up and then come over. But this basically shows you the intent, the upper patio up here with the stone steps coming around. I don't know if that's Steve jumping in there or not, but yeah, it basically shows the integral landscaping, landscape boulders, things like that. This also shows the pool safety fence that'll be required. Go back here. It's a 6-foot
Please speak
aluminum.
up into the microphone.
Oh, sorry. It's a 6-foot aluminum fence, as you can see in this location here. It basically runs along the property line and ties into the house with self-latching gates, and any openings from the back of the house will be meet pool safety requirements. This just shows a larger view of the rear yard once the existing patio is resurfaced. The existing stone retaining walls that are in rough shape and kind of falling down will be replaced with a concrete retaining walls with a stone veneer on it.
That's the second patio up on the other left.
That's correct.
It steps up to
Right, they come up this way here.
concrete steps or?
I think they're going to be all
Stone, natural stone steps.
Yeah, kind of working into the slope of the hillside.
Well, let me ask you, the very first item on the village engineer's memo raises some concern for me. It says coverage must be verified, however, it appears to be exceeded by 115% over the allowable and 26.9% greater than the existing. What it,
I actually have more information on that. Since our submission, I've been schooled a little bit by the building inspector and the village engineer on coverage calculation. So we're going to actually have to update that calculation, and we will require a coverage variance. The coverage that the village engineer references in this comment 1 was taken from our application data sheet, the last page of the application, which includes the driveway, which I understand the driveway should not be included in the coverage calculation. So we will exceed it, the coverage, and we'll need a variance. However, the extent of the variance won't be 115%. It'll be about 2,000 square feet less because it's got a pretty big driveway there. Just to clarify that.
okay.
So you're gonna ask for a coverage variance of 2,000 square feet?
No, the overage,
Well, if
Oh, I did.
yeah, the driveway
yeah, the
is,
driveway's about 2,000 square
That's coming
feet.
in.
So the allowable is about 3,600 square feet maximum, and we're proposing about 5,900 square feet. So it'll be about a 23, yeah,
2,300
actually works out to be about 2,300 square foot coverage variance.
Still probably
About
over 40, 60%?
It's pretty impressive.
Do you have the exact actual number? What was the actual number?
The actual number for total coverage that I calculated was 5,970.
Okay, so it's about 60%.
Yeah.
I think that's really excessive. I think you're gonna have to look at what you can do here to reduce that coverage calculation. I mean,
Can I just say something? The question is,
Please identify yourself.
Steve Griggs. Well, the coverage, it seems like the coverage is already over when they bought the house. So I understand the law was changed in 2008, something with the coverage. I don't know if you're the right board to explain the coverage, because it's represented as, the coverage is over before they even did anything. So apparently, when they bought the house, it was a non-conforming lot anyway. I don't know how they got approval for the whole, it's over before we did anything, you understand?
No, I understand.
So I don't understand how it could be so far out of reach. I don't understand.
Well, it's what the regulations are now. I know
Yeah,
what
but
the
they bought
regulations
the
are
house,
now.
and then
I
they changed the
understand that.
rules after they bought the house. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly.
Yes, the Board of Trustees changed the zoning ordinance regulations at some point. I don't know when the last regulations were changed.
Coverage was 2008, and there was some fine-tuning. Yeah.
Okay. So it's really not, so it's a little confusing, because when you read it, it's already over and they didn't even do anything yet.
I still think, if you're coming in at a 60% over coverage, that's really excessive.
Yeah.
And whether, you're gonna have to go to the ZBA for
Sure.
that, but again, you're gonna have to come to the planning board, and we're gonna make a recommendation or comments to the ZBA on this. And my comment right now is, I don't know how the other board
Yeah.
members feel, but I think it's excessive at this point. I think you have to look at ways that you can reduce that coverage to get it more into line. I mean, the ZBA has granted variances for coverage, but I don't recall anything in the range of 60%.
No, it seems very excessive. I would say the same thing, it's very excessive.
So, I mean, we have to look at, well, can you reduce the decks that you're proposing, the patios you're proposing? Can you move the pool around closer to the house and then combine one deck with the other deck? So that you're not, one patio with the other, so that you're not spread out throughout the entire backyard, right? And then maybe you can concentrate that coverage. And then plus that also helps you with the stormwater too. I think Caesar raised a good point too. I was concerned also, what's your construction process here? How are you going to build the pool, maintain erosion and sediment control on the property, get trucks up there, and also be able to hold back the water while you're doing the construction? So I think that has to be explained.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, getting back to that, the truck route is almost on the property line. I don't remember which way the slope is. The trucks are gonna come in along the property line?
Right, we show a barrier along the property line just to make that clear, so there's no problem with going over into the neighbor's property. So we show that on the plans pretty clearly, understanding that we are pretty close to the neighbor's property there. But yeah, the slope basically comes straight down, and there's a slight pitch towards the neighbor's property, but for the most part, it's kind of down, straight down the hill.
Is the new patio that's closest to the house, is that part of the previous coverage overage?
Yeah, it's an existing patio. We extended it like 2 feet.
Yeah, that's what I say. So, if you move that pool closer to the house and combine that patio, the existing patio with the pool, then you can reduce that coverage, I think, substantially. Get more in line with, what I think this board and probably what the ZBA would be more willing to accept. Any other comments from any of the board members?
Also, the trees that are going to be interfered with this new construction need to be marked, and what kind they are, and the size and protection.
Right, I think, picking up on that too, Sheila, there are comments here from the Environmental Conservation Board too. He said the lighting location and detail should be added. A 20-inch maple tree located within the no disturbance area and a 30-inch maple tree adjacent to the proposed construction entrance are shown as trees to be removed. The conditions of the two trees are not shown. It is not apparent why the 20-inch maple tree needs to be removed, and it appears that the 30-inch maple tree could be spared by the relocation of the construction gate and the protection of the tree from soil compaction and damage from construction equipment. The removal of the 2 trees, together with the removal of a 26-inch maple and 2 18-inch maples located within the area shown for the construction of the proposed swimming pool, would represent a significant loss of trees on the property. Adequate replacement landscaping for the trees being removed should be provided. I think you'll also hear that from our landscape architect consultant too. I mean, as I said, she was not able to address these projects this month, but I'm sure she'll get back on next month. Jan, did you want to add anything to those comments from the ECB?
Just the 2 20-inch, the 2 trees that are in the no disturbance zone, we were not sure why they were being removed, and then again, we recommend the replacement of trees because there are 5 trees being taken out, removed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
You know, it might be helpful if you said there was an overage when you first bought the house.
Yes.
So could you, if you were to identify what that overage is and then the new overage, then that may be helpful.
Okay, yeah, it was a little confusing. Okay, thank you.
Steve, if you're going to speak, you have to speak into the microphone for the
Okay.
transcriber.
Thank you.
Any other comments from any of the board members? No? Any comments from anyone in the public? Okay, well, I think you have our comments and then also the ECB's and the engineers, so I think you'll have to address those and come back to us next month with the revised plan. We'll take a look at it at that point and see what you can do with regard to the coverage.
Thank you.
Okay?
I'm sorry, the one other thing that I think you should just make sure about is that the screening for the neighbors is really effective. So make sure that you can sort of document that, because when you're looking at renderings, it looks like it's pretty barren on certain areas.
Yeah, I saw the.
And I'm like, wait a second, you know, you
It's
just
not
said,
that barren, right.
so let's just sort of document
some
that.
photos.
Yeah, we're going to take some
Yeah, you
photos
should-
of the
you did some
backyard.
nice photos of the trees and stuff like that, so
Right.
if you could do that.
I like taking pictures.
That's good.
Thank you.
And you totally did a good job.
I think also, as you move the pool closer to the house, it's going to have less of an impact on the neighbors and on the visual too, so. Okay?
Thank you.
Does it help to have this or not?
Oh, is that mine?
That's ours.
No, I'm okay. Thank you. No, okay.
Okay, next item is 2016-38 Jennifer Friedman, 200 Riverview Road.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Christopher Carthy. I am the principal of Pools of Perfection, and I am with Jennifer Friedman Regal, the principal of the home. And by way of background here, what happened here is the Friedmans bought their home some years ago, many years ago, and it had a pool with an existing patio and walls around it. This year we restored the interior of the pool, which is we replastered the interior of the pool, put new tile and coping on the pool. And in the process of doing that, we also decided to replace the existing patio around the pool, which was at the time a concrete patio and concrete block walls. We replaced them with bluestone. In the process of doing that, we were informed by the building inspector that we should stop because we didn't have a permit, because we were replacing an existing footprint, but we needed a permit to replace the existing footprint from concrete to bluestone. Fair enough. I should have known that. I sit on the planning board in the town of North Castle, so here I am getting a, quote with my hand in the cookie jar in a sense. So what we did is we stopped work, we cleaned up the job, we then went and hired, and then what I did, I came in to see the building inspector to find out that in fact pool was built and recorded on a previous survey, but that the existing patios that were built were never recorded on the survey, which is a pain in the neck, okay? So that's what we discovered in process. So at that point, I then hired a surveyor, I surveyed the property, hired an engineer, my engineer in-house, and we created a site plan. I then submitted the application, and then this morning, Doug was kind enough to talk to me, and I spoke to Doug and revised the plan, spent the whole day working on the plan, revised it so that the gross land coverage calculations were updated, and The biggest issue for me here, quite frankly, is, I will run through the engineering comments if you don't mind at some point, but my biggest issue here is point number one, which is the gross land coverage. So I am anxious to discuss the GLC with the building inspector and the town engineer, because we have a new zoning conformance table with the existing gross land coverage and the new gross land coverage calculations. And I'm anxious to discuss them, because really what I'd like to do is run through this, of course, answer your questions, and at least move forward to the ZBA so that I can move forward on a variance for the coverage, and in the process, of course, address all of the engineer's comments.
What is the gross coverage number?
Yeah?
You take the microphone with you, if you're going to talk.
No, I won't talk.
So the footprint's not changed.
The footprint has not changed.
It is what it is. You just
It is
changed
what it
the
is, correct. The
Now,
footprint
let me get
has
it
not
straight.
changed.
The patio that you were replacing was never approved in the first place.
I don't know if it was approved or not approved. I don't know if the rules have changed. I don't know if the as-built was accurate. It strikes me that to build a pool, I would assume you would need an as-built at some point. Maybe they didn't need an as-built after they built the pool. Of course, the Regals didn't build the pool. They bought the house with the pool and the patio. So I can't really speak to the history of the application. It's pretty old, actually. It's a pretty old pool side. So it's hard for me to know.
When was the house
So
built?
you're not adding any coverage?
I'm not adding any coverage.
Where you at?
Right, I'm not adding any coverage except that one could argue that I'm adding coverage because
It wasn't there.
it wasn't there. The only problem is, I'm really, what I'm doing, of course, is I'm going to be blunt, I'm legalizing is really what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to legalize an existing patio. That's really what I'm trying to do.
That's different. That's going to be different. It's not the same
It's
material.
the same shape, same everything.
I know,
no
but
change
it's not the
footprint. It was concrete, now it's bluestone.
With-
It was concrete, now it's
You're gonna have
bluestone.
gaps between
No,
the drainage, gonna be,
there is a drainage plan submitted to the town engineer.
so
Quite frankly,
you're
we're
gonna grout,
improving the drainage.
you're gonna grout between the,
Yes.
so to be,
Yeah, it's impervious.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6%.
You know, it was impervious before I got there too, but my objective in fact is to improve the drainage. That's what the Regals asked me to do as well, so it's part of the plan.
There was no drainage, that's why it was in such terrible repair, because there was no...
Jane, you can't speak from the audience.
Thank you. We actually, it's for the transcriber.
Right.
Sorry.
So if you speak, there's a microphone.
She's an attorney too.
I know, I can't help myself.
The planning board.
You can have this attorney.
From existing over allowable. 46% over allowable, and how much over existing?
bring back the slide rule.
84% over existing.
Oh, 80, no.
84 over existing and 45 over proposed.
You mean 84 over permitted?
Over existing,
He's got 20.
45 over what's allowed. This is existing here.
Your existing coverage is which?
2944,
2944, because your required is,
3716.
where'd that come from?
Right.
At 20,000 square feet,
Well,
You
it's
know,
only 32.
Yeah, this is-
It's only
Yeah,
32.
this is really,
The other 86.
time out, folks, time out. This is really discussions in the office, not at the planning board meeting.
There's a little too much going
Okay.
on here.
Okay.
You need to
Yeah,
clarify.
I think you need to discuss it with him. There are also a number of comments on here that need to be addressed. Again, without knowing what the actual overage is, I mean, I don't think it's appropriate for us to make comments at this point. I don't know where you're gonna
I'm
be.
hoping maybe they can figure that out, but I would like to go through some comments on the engineer sheet as well, okay?
Well, I think what you need to do is address the comments on the engineer sheet.
I think we have in our application, and they were on the engineer's sheet, so I want to ask you about them.
Well, wait a minute, they weren't on the, I don't believe they were on the plans that we saw originally.
The application.
When did you submit the
The
plans
application,
that?
for example, makes reference to a mailing. We had to do, the mailing, for example. And yet, on the engineer's notes, or in the engineer's memo, it talks about requiring the notice neighbor list and the proof of mailing, whereas that was submitted with the application. That's my point.
Those weren't filled out, the ones that I have.
What do you mean?
The ones that were submitted, they weren't filled out.
Okay, listen, all right, time out. These are administrative issues that you need to take up with them, not at the planning board meeting, but in their office, okay?
My question to you then is there any way we can at least reconcile that with the town engineer so we can get on the ZBA calendar? I'd like to just get on the ZBA calendar, reconcile whatever I need to, but can I get on the ZBA calendar?
I don't think that's gonna happen tonight, because there are too many outstanding issues. These gentlemen haven't even gotten the correct numbers yet in terms of what the percentages are. So I think it's premature for us to send you to the ZBA.
Typically what happens is that someone comes in here with an application and kind of has all the certs already vetted out. And then we're supposed to make a recommendation, in essence, to go to the ZBA or not. So the idea is that we're sort of looking at this as if it doesn't need a variance, would we accept it? Okay, so right now there's a lot of questions about what your application is. So I think you have to solve those first, and then you go to the ZBA.
I mean, we're talking about a variance where we're in the ballpark of a 30 or 40% variance, I think, according to the engineer's memo this morning. 35% is what the engineer said.
But these are all speculations.
Yeah, we don't want to
But
discuss
is that a
this.
reason not to send that to the ZBA? That kind of stuff?
When you have the numbers, when the numbers have been worked out, we'll look at it, and then we'll make our recommendation, and we'll send you to the ZBA at the appropriate time. But this is too incomplete, and it's not the appropriate time. I think there are administrative issues that have to be resolved before you come back to the board.
Frankly, you shouldn't have been here.
This is really,
We got no vote this morning.
Yeah, so, I mean,
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Before you go, just as just as we thought 60% variance was high, he says it's about 35, 40, and he straightens it out. Say it's 40. Are we going to think that's too high? I mean, just so
are we, or are you, or all of us? I may think that's too high still, 40%.
So if you get, I think it's a little high also. Just a pre-warning that when you calculate it out and you hear next time and it's 40%, we would probably say it's too high.
Right, we have an existing condition. You mentioned in the previous application that you want to know what the existing condition was vis-a-vis the new condition. So in other words, we have this surveyed prior to the work. We can show the survey of what was existing and what's proposed.
That may be mitigated.
That may be mitigated. Correct.
We'll calculate it out.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item is 2016-35, Steve and Suzanne Soleimani, 4 Bracebridge Lane.
Introduce yourself. Use the microphone.
If you want to take the second microphone, too.
Stand up straight. Stand up.
Community for that.
He's not the village attorney over there.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Lino Sharetta, counsel on behalf of the Solomani's. Again, this is for Bracebridge. What we're proposing is to construct a single-family home. With me tonight is Greg Sharp, our architect. Just a couple of things, and I'll turn it over to Greg. You recall we were here last month for the first time. We had some homework to do with respect to our site plan. Just a couple of things that we did do. We did reduce the coverage. I know we had a coverage issue last month, so we reduced that, whereby I believe we no longer need a coverage variance. Remember last month we needed a coverage variance. We don't now. The other thing that we did with respect to the Broadway buffer, and this is some clarification, we still show a retaining wall in the buffer, And the way I understand it, that's going to require variance under our code. If there's, and Ed, this is for you, if I get rid of if there's a way to remove the retaining wall from the roadway buffer, and I'm just having a driveway there, does that still require variance? Under our code, it says that if it's a driveway, you can reprove that without a variance, but if there's any other structure in the roadway
Parking
buffer.
area is not a driveway.
Yeah, that's.
Right, but if I,
Tree removal,
Grading.
grading.
so I guess you're telling me to go to ZBA.
Well, I think there's somewhere along the line, I think the parking area needs some more fine tuning.
And we'll do that. I mean,
I honestly believe,
Yeah, we might as well get into it. I think you really need to cut back the parking in roadway buffer.
okay.
All right? It should be a driveway, not, a driveway that you end up parking 4 or 5 cars in.
Gotcha. So I'm glad we talked about that, because again, that was a conversation that we had, and we just wanted to clarify that. So again, we did reduce the house with respect to the coverage. We still have a height issue, which I understand Greg will speak to. I know we spoke with the engineer and the building inspector today. But again, we did make some changes to the structure. We did reduce it. And with respect to the massing of our structure compared to the neighbors, we're still smaller in massing compared to the neighborhood. So with that, I'll turn it over to Greg to the specific to the site plan and what we changed. Thank you. Use the mic.
Hi, Greg Sharp, architect for the Solomonis. So Lino reviewed some of the other comments, but I think the main issue is currently the height on the house. So I had just discussed this with Ed and Douglas before the meeting. So I have addressed that and have actually made the house compliant. So we've made up those additional 2 feet that we needed to do. So with that being
How do
said,
you do that?
I added some steps. Can I approach?
Sure. Not the judge.
Well, the dais looks pretty judgmental. Patty, if you're gonna speak, you need to speak into the microphone.
Some at the rear of the house, I added 3 steps going back up out of the basement. So
But how does that change the elevation?
basically,
The proposed is lower than the existing, so he's not gonna lower the existing.
yeah.
So trying to shorten it up.
Now the proposed and the existing are the same. So basically, the existing low point is 188, and so what we're gonna have is at the perimeter of the house, it's gonna be 188. So coming out of the basement, because this element is set back in an overhang, we're gonna have some steps within the basement area. So within the existing building coverage. So now we're no longer. So now we no longer have a height issue.
You didn't change the height of the house, you brought the soil up higher.
No, in my proposal, I had actually, no, in my previous proposal, what I had proposed to do was to basically lower the rear yard from the existing. So I had already reduced the house by about 4 feet from the original proposal, but within that, I had,
So what are you saying? You're saying what the grade at the back of the house now, or the elevation at the back of the house now, is what the elevation of the elevation of the topography at the back of the house now is what the elevation at the back of the house will be when you're done.
That's correct. That's right. So basically, what I proposed before was to lower it, and what I'm doing now is putting it back up. Okay. So, yeah. So I'm not changing. I mean, I've already reduced the house by about 4 feet. I've reduced the house in every direction. I've reduced it lengthwise, widthwise, height-wise, lowered it on the site, reduced the decks, the coverage. And so I think we've satisfied all of those requirements. We should be compliant with those. And so obviously we did also remove, I did reduce the parking area significantly from before, and did move the house away from the Broadway buffer and the tree, and I did get rid of the retaining wall that was there that created the parking area. So the only reason why we need a retaining wall along this side was because of the steepness of the slope, of the existing slope was greater than the 10% required for a driveway. So, and obviously we'll work to try to work that out. But,
What's the height of that retaining wall?
well, I took this out.
Well,
This is very low. Basically, it's
The height of the wall.
yeah. I'm gonna show it to you. It's here. Okay. It's basically is indicated right here. So it's only a couple of feet at the most. So and there'll be a picket fence that's sort of in front of it. So the neighbor's property has a picket fence. So it's not going to be past their picket fence height. I'm sorry. I will approach again.
Your Honor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is basically the picket fence. So it would be lower than this. But it would be next to it. Or
So Broadway's over here?
that's right. That's right. So it wouldn't be here. This is actually, but it's the same fence. It's just this fence would be at the front. So it'd be up there in the photo. This is more towards the rear yard, but it's really only to hold like a very little bit of the driveway back. So it's something that's like, knee high.
So how close is it to this picket fence then, to the property line?
It's a couple of feet away, probably three feet away. So and I do show plantings between it. So
You're 3 feet off the property line or 3 feet away from the picket fence?
well, the picket fence is the property line.
Okay.
So it's the neighbor's picket fence.
Where's the driveway?
It's over here, so it's on the other side of it.
Oh, okay, did go right.
So, and these are, we're utilizing the existing pillars that are there, and so we're coming through this, and then it drops down into a slope, and so we're utilizing the current slope of the property, and in order to create the 10% slope for the driveway, we need this little knee wall. Now, I mean, it's not that significant of a feature. I mean, I'm sure we could figure out a way to not have it, but it just sort of makes it work a little bit better. And like I said, I don't think it's more than 2 feet tall, so it's a small wall.
How many evergreens are you removing along Broadway?
Only the ones between the pillars. That's
Do you
right.
count on those?
Let's see, I can't right now. 4.
And then what's the width of the driveway?
Should be around, I think it's 12 feet.
12 feet, okay. And the existing pillars are going to remain?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Stone pillars?
Yeah, we're utilizing the same pillars in the cut, and we're keeping all of the screening that's there. We're keeping the significant trees within the Broadway buffer. So the only trees that we're removing within the Broadway buffer are the ones going between this between the pillars. And we are removing the lamps that are on the trees. I know that was an issue that you guys had expressed that you wanted.
And then again, too, as we said, the parking area in the Broadway buffer has to be redesigned and take that out. And I think also, there are a couple of things now. This property slopes down from Broadway, correct?
That's correct.
What is the roof elevation compared to the elevation of Broadway?
Okay, Broadway, we're saying is at 202.
And the highest point,
And if you go 188 plus 35 is, what are we at? So it'd be
Anyone?
223?
This is a test.
So 223 versus, what was it?
202.
202.
So 21 feet.
So you're about 21 feet above.
That's right.
Above
Above
the
that.
elevation.
And there's about, and as you can see, there's about, these trees are probably 15 feet tall. So we're fairly
They're
hidden.
relatively tall, yeah. But again, just contextually, taste is fingers in the eye of the beholder and everything. Contextually, though, this house is so different from any other house in the area.
Yeah.
And again, you're using so many different materials. You're using stone. I think there's some wood in there. There's some metal around the windows. I think there was some stucco on the exterior too. Yeah. So you have like 4 or 5 different materials you're using on this.
Yeah.
Where it just in such a tight location, in such a visual location, it just seems to be out of contrast with the surrounding houses in the neighborhood. Even as you show in some of your photographs here that were in your submission. I mean,
I was showing some
You had a
comparable.
color photograph last time. Is that up there?
Of some, I mean,
A rendering.
of the, at least more or less, that's right.
But you lost the peg.
next door. I leave it to George to say what style they are, but faux Victorian or
It
faux.
is a modern, it is a modern barn house, so, but it obviously does have some traditional elements, it does have some modern barn elements. That's a house that's around the corner.
Around the corner, and
Yeah.
it's set back, it's not on Broadway.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, I think, here with they use more earth tones in it too, so
Yeah.
it sort of blends in there.
Mm-hmm.
And,
It's just looking at it from the side, it's a massive wall.
Well, you're also looking at a two-dimensional elevation versus a 3D model. It's not a massive wall because this is stepped back. This is about 50 feet back. These are not in the same plane. So there would be a variety of surfaces and textures and objects. I think the house is very subtle moves. I don't view it as too aggressive in any way. It does have a metal roof. It's supposed to look like a modern barn. The steel windows are, I think, very subtle and contextual. I feel that the houses that are on either side of it are also their own styles. So not that there's anything that's prevailing about those styles. They don't seem to be anything that's historically significant as far as having something that is would require historical protection.
No, not that, but again, going back to the ARB, and again, I'm not looking to do their work for them either. I'm sure they'll have their own comments. But as I recall, when I was on the ARB, there was a portion of the code that said houses should not be too dissimilar nor too similar to each other. And it just seems that this goes to the dissimilarity side of it, that it's so dissimilar from the other houses. And again, you're not talking about large lots. I mean, if you were talking about several acres and the wooded acres where the house is more fits more into the landscaping, I might see it, but
I would make an argument that variety is a good thing. Architectural variety is a good thing, and will make the town a more interesting
Variety might be a
place.
good thing, but that's not in our code.
Okay. To your point, Chair, with respect to the similarities, it's excessive similarity, dissimilarity. I've dealt with this, whether it's here or south of here. I mean, it's a standard. So we understand we have to address this with the HRB. Again, it's really the excessive similarity, dissimilarity with respect to the surrounding properties, and we understand that. So with that, we'll do our best with respect to the HRB, or the ARB rather, to address those issues. But again, it really is a matter of opinion with respect to the taste. And I understand and respect what you're saying, but just a question of
it's something that we're gonna have to really address at the ARB.
Well, I think if you just look at the pictures that are there, they're more traditional houses. They may be, like, as I said, they're more Victorian, colonial in style, some capes. There's the one contemporary house, excuse me, but again, that's around the corner. It's not even, it's not even on the same plane as the others. It's set back several houses from Broadway, so it's barely visible.
Good.
No, go ahead, George.
I think part of the problem is really just, frankly, don't take this the wrong way, it's the presentation. And I think that variety is okay. And I think that unfortunately, for people that haven't seen something like this, there's always a sort of an edge about it. And I think all you really need to do is to show what you believe, which is that this does kind of work with it. It isn't, exactly like your neighbor. It isn't this, but it does work in a way that you consider harmonious. And I think just the way one would react to that drawing right there is that it isn't necessarily that. So that's why I think you're getting these queries about this. So I think it's up to you to kind of show, hey, guess what? This actually does work, and here's how it does, and pictures do help. So
I will prepare that, but I guess I was also expecting more of that to be with the ARB as well, just because then I would provide, additional presentation materials as needed to do that. I really thought this was more about the site plan and that thing, but...
Well, there are those issues too, though. We just got stuck on
I had
the issue, but...
I had taken a picture of this house, not because it's such a similar style, but it does have sort of a similar layout as it's an L shape, it's off Broadway, and it has the driveway to the side, and there's just a lot of similarities in planning, and it's about 4 or 5 houses away from this. So the only reason why I took that is just because even though it's not the same house, no, it's on Broadway. That's his house. It's actually much taller than our house would be. On Broadway, but like I said, it has a similar sort of like layout and massing as far as it's a barn, and then there's a garage in the front, and the garage faces to the side, and the entrance is at center. So it is layout-wise, it is different, but layout-wise, it is a very traditional type of home. It is a barn style, but it is a center hall style home. So even though it looks different, but
I think what might also help for me anyway is if the materials that were being used were more earthy in tone. I think that some of the materials that you're using just seem to stand out. I think the metal, particularly
that may be a presentation problem. You may be right. So, but and when I've done these projects before, I've bought sample boards as well, so I can also bring sample boards of the materials that can help. Because the metal roofing is actually like a zinc. It's like a dull copper, and the wood is a natural wood. It's just wood. It's not, and it will naturally weather over time. And the stone walls are basically a local stone wall that's built locally by the local people. Steel windows is a universal, traditional element. Cobblestones, and then you're right, the white stucco is maybe more of a modernist element.
White stucco is what leaps out at me. And
Okay.
if you're driving by, I've been in other communities, and you drive by and you look at a house, you say, where the heck did that spaceship come from?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what we're looking for.
No spaceships. No spaceships. Okay. Well, this is definitely not a spaceship. I've been involved with a couple of spaceships. This is not a spaceship. This is not a spaceship. But I could certainly, there are beautiful colors as well. So I actually do use a very beautiful stucco color. Sometimes it's not white, that's off-white. It's called London Fog, and I could bring you a sample of that if you prefer to do something like that. It's definitely a little bit, it definitely takes it back to a more traditional style of stucco than the bright white, the ultra bright white.
This board does sometimes get involved in materials and things like that. So it isn't just the ARB that does it, but it's much more in this kind of context.
Okay.
And again, I think if you come with what you feel is good
Yeah.
and show it.
Okay. I would definitely bring more images, and I'd bring you some samples of materials, because I understand when you look at that image before, it's harsh, but it's also a two-dimensional representation of what it is, and it does look like a big wall, but it's not a wall. These are different volumes and things like that. So. But like I said, we've tried to answer all the questions, and we'll basically, hopefully, get enough feedback and be able to work with Ed and Doug to be able to come up with the appropriate answers so that we can hopefully move forward in the process. So.
I think also then, let me just go through some of the comments from the ECB too. The construction as proposed would result in significant intrusion into the roadway buffer. The required 50-foot setback from the curb line should be shown and labeled clearly on the drawings. I think they're bringing up the same points that we've brought up here too with regard to the buffer. The applicant's proposing to construct a paved parking area to accommodate the parking of 2 cars in addition to the proposed driveway and 2-car garage. Paved area is far too large, and the location of the parking area and a portion of the proposed garage is likely to have significant adverse impact on the 12-inch tree, the species of and condition of which are not shown, which may well be avoidable. I think again, that's that tree in the front yard. I think removing that parking area there will accomplish 2 things. It gets you out of the Broadway buffer, which I don't want to see. It also gives you more green space, and also will help that tree, and also gives you more green space where you can do a little bit of landscaping in there too.
Okay.
And then the species caliber and condition of any trees in or adjacent to the area of the disturbance should be provided, together with tree protection detail for any trees likely to be adversely impacted. Soil and material stockpiling areas should also be shown.
We show soil stockpiling back here. We show some construction notes, tracking pad, and we show limits of disturbance on the plan, and we show where we would put our silt fence throughout the entire project. So I did try to address as many of those items as well. And I do show the tree protection around this tree, which is a box, but I guess we need a better detail of what that box would
I
be.
think also you need to look at what is the drip line of that tree.
Yeah.
If it's a pretty significant tree, you want to have a tree protection at the drip line. Again, that will give more protection. You see you have that circle around there. I don't know if that represents the actual drip line, but again, it looks like you're doing work within the drip line in terms of the garage and in terms of that parking area. And when you get into the drip line of trees, you start doing damage to the feeder roots in the trees. And those can be just as important, if not more important, than the main root of the tree, because that's how the tree gets its food. So you start cutting those off, it starts doing damage to the trees.
Okay.
So.
Well, I don't see a problem with moving the driveway out of the drip line. I think that's an easy one. I think we're pretty squeezed on our lot already, so it would be tricky to move any more for that. But no, these are arbitrary. This is not me actually doing a scientific drip line. This is me just sort of showing the perimeter of the tree, and it has a volume.
Any other comments from you?
I should take it off.
I have a question. Once you pull in the driveway and into the garage, are you able to back out without backing in onto Broadway, or can you turn? Are you able to? Is there enough space to?
Right now, we can. This is significant space to be able to turn around.
Turn around.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
But again, that's what we're looking for you to cut back on.
Yeah.
Within the buffer.
Yep. So we'll have to resolve that.
Rework that area.
I think Ed had an interesting idea that we can explore, which is a type of circular.
So a tighter, smaller circle
Yeah.
that doesn't impact the tree in the buffer.
Okay.
That would be considered driveway, not parking.
Okay.
This line indicates the buffer.
The variances have been fixed.
Well, yes, there was building height, which is now.
We've resolved that.
Well, it has to be shown on the plan, which is.
Yeah, we'll submit that in the new submission.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, within the Broadway buffer area, I mean, again, if they pull back the parking, tree removal, you're not proposing to remove it?
No, we have no trees coming out except for the ones these in their small caliper. So.
Walls, grading, and a portion of the garage are located in the buffer.
Well, the garage is no longer in the buffer. Yeah, everything's been pulled back.
Okay.
It was only the garage that was.
Again, do they even have to go for a variance? Isn't it up to the planning board?
Right.
To
Yeah, if you get rid of the parking area,
Okay.
The wall, we have to discuss a little bit.
Okay.
It's a 50-50 here. They may not have to go to ZBA.
Right, because we have.
You have the power, you have jurisdiction on
site
the
plan,
driveways.
right?
Yeah, special permit for the drive.
Right.
For your
Just for the driveway.
Just for the driveway.
Correct.
That's why they build a test like this.
As part of the site plan, we don't have just control over the driveway buffer as part of the site plan?
Just the driveway.
Okay.
You can ask the previous village attorney if you like.
All right, well, and then there are other comments from, any other comments from any
I wish I had
board
a
members?
picture
No?
of your,
Any comments from anyone in the public on this matter? No? Okay, we'll see you next month.
Yeah, just to close the loop, so we're gonna reconfigure the driveway issue for next month.
Right.
We'll include the resolution of the height on the new submission,
Right.
and then with respect to materials, we'll see if we could, come up with a solution with respect to.
Type of materials, and then also just address whatever comments are in Hans' letter, and also, well, the comments from the ECB, I think, are reflected in Hans' letter.
It's not just the material, I think it's more for, I'm thinking for everyone else, is to get these people, everyone, comfortable with what you're presenting as what will be the final outcome. And other projects that were non-traditional have done that, so, and it's worked fairly well, so that's a suggestion.
I'll get more images. I don't have more on me, but the idea is to create a modern barn. Not that this, it's a modern barn aesthetic. It's not a colonial house, but it's a modern barn aesthetic.
While they're looking at that, Doug, if I remember, there was drainage issues on the west north corner.
Yeah, they still need to address the drainage stuff.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I do like the idea of this whole spaceship.
You need a spaceship. The next item on the agenda is 2016-31, Papapanu and Lala, 20 Lewis Road. And I'm recused on this, so I'll turn it over to Sheila. Mine or
Yeah, right.
I'm not Matt.
Pat Steinsteiner, Gotham Design, Community Development, here representing Papapano. We have, I think, made some good progress with knocking off a lot of the Han things. We have a couple more we still have to deal with. We got his letter today, and we'll address those. Since the last time we were here, we did move the pool. We shifted the pool up further to get it more in the sunlight from the trees that are down here. We've maintained our separation from the trees that are around it. We're a little bit more than 25 feet from the property line at the closest. I know there's concerns with neighbors in this, with where their houses are, and there was some conversation about why can't we move this down closer to the house. If we take a look at the site and walk the site, you'll see that this is actually a good clearing. There are two small trees in here that really are inconsequential. So this is the ability to put a pool really where it kind of fits on the property best and doesn't crowd the house or require the removal of other trees. We also have added the drainage information on the drawing, although Han Engineering would like us to provide some additional documentation on that, which we will of course do. Major issue here is site coverage. We're not, thank goodness, in the 60 or the 30. I think we're in the kind of 10, 15, maybe 20, site coverage numbers. So I think we're within striking distance. I think our goal is to try and hit it around 10% over. But that's a zoning board issue at this moment. I don't know if we're ready. That's your decision of when we get to go.
What is the exact number?
I think it's 32.
32 that we're over.
0.4.
32.4% over.
That's a little different than 10%.
Yeah, I think that's higher than what I was.
My math is not so good.
Because we're showing 13.2 and 15.9.
We look at the square footage number, so you go from
We're,
Allowable is 4,035, and then you got 5,341.
right. So we're right now at 4429,
Yep.
and is that not 13.2% over?
That's your existing is, you're going 20% over what you have, but you have 32.4% over the allowable.
Okay, I'll review that, but, I mean, I think these numbers are correct for how they're done, but I'll figure
Yeah,
out.
we're okay with the numbers,
Yeah, okay. So,
square footage.
our numbers say that right now, I'm not understanding exactly what the difference is, but we're showing 13.2 and 15.9, and I'll review it tomorrow, brought up to speed so that I understand
You're looking
what.
at the total coverage of the site. So if
Okay.
you're allowed 12% plus whatever overages it is, that's the way you're looking at it. But we're looking at
Right.
square footage wise.
Okay. Okay, so,
Excuse me for 1 second. So in essence, how much over in coverage is he proposing?
Over what's allowed is 32.4.
And existing now, he is.
Over existing is 13%.
Over existing is 20.6. Yeah.
Over existing,
Yeah,
he's
so you-
asking for 20.6.
Yeah, so the existing is currently around 400 square feet over what's allowed.
right. I mean, I knew we were over with the existing,
Yeah, you're about 10% over
Yeah.
the existing currently,
or 13.2.
over the allowable currently. Yes.
Right.
And they're looking for 20-something% more.
Yes, correct.
24, I think you said.
Yeah, 20.6.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. I mean, we are including a terraced area
10 over.
to the north side of the pool, which could obviously be something that's given up if we have to do that. I don't know, do you want us to try and do that stuff with you guys, or do you want that to be ZBA?
We would like to see that. We would also like to see the adjoining houses, the other houses in the neighborhood, which we asked for last month,
Right,
and we want photographs of them.
right. We were trying to get that done. I don't think we got it done in time for this submission. So we'll provide you with that
We would like it
information.
submitted with the whole
Sure.
packet, not drafts.
Right, of course.
Okay.
And so we'll make sure that that's included in the next submission. I think the only other thing that we had that was still kind of an open question, which seemed to be a little bit more of an open question than I was aware it was until yesterday, actually, is the access from the neighbor's driveway. I know that our client has had communication with the neighbor. We thought they were further along on it. I read the emails today, and I think they will be able to work something out, but that hasn't been done yet. So we need to get them to be on the same page so that we've got that permission. It obviously is much better because we only disturb the small section here coming in from their driveway. We have worked it out that there is the ability for us to come in from the front. So the access would be on this property, but I think that's more intrusive, and while we can avoid any trees, we're still, churning up grass and everything else. So we'll continue to work that out. Hopefully we'll have that resolved prior to the next meeting.
The fences that we had mentioned,
Yeah,
I know they're in the shrubs,
well,
but they're
I'm not sure the best way to do that.
not considered pool fences. Pool
Well, the
protection.
ones that are there now are not. So what we've done is we've shown a new fence being installed, and we've shown a detail of that somewhere, which, basically is a, dark chain link fence that's in the location of the existing fence. One of the comments that one of the neighbors has had apparently is the preference that we would sink that back into the property further, so it wouldn't be visible near the property line. The only I have to really walk the site to see what that would mean. The site right now, the perimeter is very densely planted, which we think is one of the benefits, is one of the answers to many of the concerns of the screening. So what we wouldn't want to do is start tearing that stuff out to be able to put a fence in. So I need to take a better look at that to see whether we can, if maybe it's a combination. Maybe in certain areas would be able to pull the fence further in and get behind some of the landscaping, but in other areas, we might need to be out where the existing fence is.
There are a lot of shrubs that are interwoven with the fences,
Right.
and if you remove some of those fences, you're going to be removing the shrubs.
We actually weren't proposing to remove the fences. What we were going to do is add a fence adjacent to the fences. And
Well, you should, perhaps it makes sense for you to read the lawyer's letter.
I
from
did
your-
today.
Right. And they're not necessarily agreeing with all the things that you're saying. However, with the fence that you're saying now, that you are not going to touch the existing fence, but you're going to build a fence within that, that's what they asked. But it doesn't sound like, in my opinion, from reading this, that you and your client are necessarily collaborating effectively, since we do have a letter from a lawyer from the neighbors. And they bring up some big issues that I think you have to address. And I think it's important to do that prior to coming here, and that way it's a lot easier for all.
I agree.
So let's do that.
And then, yeah, we got the letter, I think, actually you sent it to me yesterday or today, this morning. So we're aware, we had not.
Let's do that. And the other thing I would suggest you do is, just to make it straightforward for all, is I know you have come to the conclusion that this is the correct location for the pool.
Right.
Sometimes it makes sense to show others who question that, what are the other
Yes, we can
places,
do that,
and,
certainly.
and say, this is why this doesn't work, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Good idea.
And that way, everyone sort of understands.
Yeah,
what's
often,
going on.
unless we show that, they don't understand why this is a better place. I think that's a good idea. This was just, here's a photo of one section where that existing fence is. I think the easiest thing in that kind of a location would be to run that fence on the inside of the existing fence. And that way you'd have a very inintrusive, it wouldn't make, wouldn't have any adverse impacts. But we'll walk that and get, better information on it. And I agree with Mr. Boyle that we do need to, in fact, that's kind of what I was trying to say in a softer way at the start, was that the neighbors and my client need to kind of get closer to a resolution on it. If that's not going to be how we come in with the travel way, if we're going to come across this to get it, that might answer part of that. But their concerns with the screening and their concerns with the fence, obviously, we'd like to have them saying we're very happy with the way this is being done.
You know, the alternate driveway access, it may not, you may be able to get between the trees, but are you going to be able to get between the drip lines? So you don't run over the roof?
We actually...
Because it looked like, I'm looking at some of the trees
Yeah,
there.
we have a 10-inch and a 16-inch, a 12-inch and a 10-inch. My guess is that we would have to kind of try and see where we can get and how much impact we have. We also don't need, this is a relatively small pool, we don't need that big equipment. So I don't know if there's equipment, if we can do equipment that has less of an impact on the root structure. We can bring stuff in that's awful, we can bring stuff in that's less awful. We'd be trying to go for the less awful side. So I'll see where those drip lines are. Yeah, I haven't even, this, I just
Part of the
drew
spec
sitting
sheet,
here.
so that's awful.
Well, it's a term of art of the profession. The idea of this red line, I drew sitting here tonight. Because, I read the letter when I got it this morning, but I haven't really been able to address it. I'm also, familiar with letters from attorneys, and they have to do the right job representing their clients, and sometimes it can sound a little bit more intense than it may turn out to be. So I don't know that, so until I get resolution on it, I need, we need to find out what people want.
I'm actually here representing the neighbors that letters from my...
You have to come up, speak into the microphone when the chairman calls you.
Sure.
When
we have public hearing.
Okay.
I'm getting this ready for it.
Okay.
I think you're done. Thank you.
Yes.
You're cooked.
We'll see you next month.
Thanks so much. Next week? Next month, yeah. I'm gonna sit down, then they'll call in more.
Before we open the public, anyone else from the board? Yes.
Hi, my name is Matthew Peixoto. I'm an attorney at Zarin and Steinmetz. We sent the letter that you were referencing earlier. I don't want to belabor any of these points because you have the letter before you. I think we're interested in working collaboratively with the developer here, and I think Patty said it. We want everybody to work together to get to somewhere where everyone's happy. I'd like to see the changes to the fencing that you were discussing, as well as Mr. Lowe, your suggestion that they show the different locations where the pool could be placed and why those don't work in their approximation. I also do want to clear the record a little bit on the access issue. There has been some miscommunication, I think, but one of my clients, the Minkoffs, the property that would be used for access, the answer right now as to whether their property can be used for access is definitively no. And that will be the answer until some things are addressed. So I just want this board to be clear on that. So
that's why it's very important that you two work this out.
Absolutely.
And you come with a complete proposal here so we can review that.
Yep.
That would be appropriate.
Understood.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hold on a second, Sarah?
Give a card. Or just give Sarah your name.
What's up?
Just give Sarah the spelling of your name.
Any other comments from the public? Okay. See you next month.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Generali?
The last item on the agenda is 2016-29, Eileen Fisher, 116, 118 Main Street.
Peter Reynolds from North River Architecture and Planning, representing Eileen Fisher. Also Renee Byers, landscape architect, and Michael Stein from Hudson Engineering, so we can hopefully address all the remaining issues. Do I need to reintroduce the project? Shall I do that? Everybody gets to speak. Okay.
Well, yeah, well, there's some comments here from Han Engineering. And then also, I was also looking at the site plan, I noticed on the east side, the property line, at the last meeting, we had made the suggestion that, a couple of suggestions, I think the neighbors who live on the east side were concerned too about the size of the trees that were being proposed, and that they would eventually, restrict their view through to the Hudson. And in looking at the revised site plan, it looked like there were still some trees in there that were the type that would grow to 60 or 70 feet tall. And I was wondering if you had taken a look at that and come back with some different trees that would, end up being like 25, 30 feet tall, something like that.
Okay.
That was one item. I think the other one too was on the west side then, where your driveway is proposed and where there's going to be, I guess, Belgian block curve along that driveway. That Belgian block curve was going to be in the drip line of the series of trees down that down the driveway, and we had asked for an arborist to take a look at that and see what impact that those Belgian blocks would have on the trees, and then what suggestions what recommendations they would have to make sure those trees are not severely damaged. Even though they may not be great trees necessarily, though they do provide a buffer between your property and the parking lot that's right next door.
No, they're valuable to us for sure. I'll let Renee speak to both of them.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
Those are my two comments. Caesar, George,
I asked this before, but I'll ask it again. I mean, what's the current use of the building?
It's a residential.
And there's no change of use intended?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
George, you have another comment? Sheila? Okay, so maybe if you could address those items for starters.
Sure.
Hi, Renee Byers, landscape architect. Let me start with, I'm going to work backwards. I'll start with the tree issue. So I went over the impact on the trees with Dan Marino, our arborist, as well as myself.
a number of years of experience with this sort of thing. And what we came up with was a narrower stone curb. We're not using the jumbo Belgian blocks anymore. We're going to use a very narrow granite curb, about 2.5, 3 inches. And I've requested that we do the hand digging for any trenching along there so that I can inspect as we go and see what kind of roots we're encountering. We can bridge over, we can go not quite as deep with the concrete, and then we'll do a root biostimulant to make sure that we increase any growth after that. But we have to balance, when we're looking at things like this, what we have to balance is the amount of water running down the driveway and falling, going over the slope and running down into the parking lot below. So I think we can achieve both with those measures.
Are there notes to
Yes.
the comments that you just made?
Undo all this, but on the curbing detail on the A002, it explains all that and talks about getting an inspection and the hand trenching, et cetera. So in terms of neighbor interactions, I actually dealt in this phase more with, can I change this to the second sheet?
It's on the back, it's on the back. Flip it. Just turn it around.
Oh, okay.
Oh, two?
Yeah. So the neighbor comments that I've addressed were on this end. So I met with Lisa Hyatt. We had a very lovely meeting, and we worked out a plan then and there, and I sent it out to her email. She reviewed it. She loved it. So I think we're in good shape back here. Now you're speaking about this side.
Right.
So that any of these trees can be maintained at the lower height, and I think that 60, 70 feet, I mean, that would, yes, an arborvitae can technically get that tall, but we can maintain it at a lower height. And also, there are already, I have pictures with me, there's already some arborvitaes planted along there. They're just smaller right now. And in terms of the view of the river, I think that, there's a number of big trees all along here, so I'm not so sure that there's...
I don't think it was the arborvitaes I was talking about. I thought there were some other trees that were identified.
No, we only have one. We have one oak tree, but that is to replace. We were asked to replace a tree. We took down a very large cherry tree back here that was probably 25, 30 feet tall. So this is a sawtooth oak. It's going to be quite small when it goes in. So I think the environmental benefits of a nice deciduous tree rather than a short-lived flowering tree are kind of outweigh that. And there's also, and again, it's deciduous, and there's a lot of deciduous trees here, so I don't see that the views are impacted there at all. And the rest of these are all very low, and there's quite a height difference too. Those neighbors are a lot taller.
Because I looked at those trees in particular, and I'm not a landscape architect,
right.
But I went online and picked out a couple of the trees that you had labeled there, and they said they could grow to 60 to 70 feet tall.
Can you? Let me just run through what I have here, because I don't want to.
2 weeks ago.
I don't want to.
When I got the plans.
I don't want to completely disagree, but we have here the arborvitae green giant at 8 feet. The one sawtooth oak, Ilex opaca, Jersey princess, we have them going in at 5 to 6 feet. I mean, again, in the wild, really, you would not see that tree anywhere. I mean, you might see a tree 60 years old, a very rare American holly that could possibly be 50 feet around here, but that is very, very, very rare.
Well, even a 40 or 50 foot tree.
But an Ilex, a 5-foot Ilex opaca can be kept. We can maintain it very small. I mean,
it's easier rather than maintain it and have to worry about maintaining it. You could just plant something that would be shorter, and then you don't have to maintain it.
If you would like us to do that, so it's the Ilex opaca. It's the American holly that you're projecting.
It might be
otherwise, it's just. Otherwise, but the sawtooth, that's a deciduous tree, as we just took down and we were asked to replace. There was dying a very large cherry tree here that was much, much taller. So.
But if you
we were asked to plant another tree, so I thought that was maybe the environmental control person could has a comment on that choice.
I'd rather have our landscape architect take a look at it too and see what she has to say about it.
Okay.
But I think the other thing too is, what about the idea that you have these larger trees overshadowing these smaller trees and shrubs? What does that do over time? It seems to me that they, just from what I've seen, they start shading things out, and eventually those smaller shrubs start dying out, and you start losing some of the screening effect.
That can happen depending on the rest of the environment and the microclimate. That's not my professional opinion in this case, but if you object to a sawtooth oak, what tree would you like to see there? I mean, we don't have, it's just a very nice
tree. Give me a tree
tree.
that's going to go to 35 feet. You tell me what tree that is. I'm not a landscape architect.
Is it the neighbor?
Yeah, it was the neighbor who was.
Is it possible then, just because I know the other neighbor came and you worked it out?
Right, they wanted a lot of.
Are you here?
Possibly work out?
Oh, is this the neighbor? Oh, please, I would love to.
There you go.
Because I did not have any conversation with this neighbor. I thought we were doing a good thing by providing privacy, so we're happy to help.
Here, yeah, you may.
This one?
I'll just take that one. Then we can.
And just speak one at a time so the transcriber.
Of course.
Hi, I'm Tom Sabatino. I live at 10 South Dearman, and I looked over the plans, and my first comment...
Are you to the southeast?
Can you show us on the map where you are?
Right here.
We'll let the record show that Mr. Sabatino is to the east of the property.
And is it your wife that I met? About the... But your only comment when we met was about the... was about the equipment. You were worried about the sound, right? Air conditioners. No, nothing about screening at that time.
I looked online and I researched this, the
Sawtooth
oak, the Quercus acutissima. It says it can grow 25 to 30 meters. 30 meters is 98 feet 6 inches, roughly. That's very big. And I have a concern that that's going to be blocking my view. I do have a view, and the tree that was taken out was an old pine tree growing at like a 45-degree angle almost. It was not a cherry tree. And this would also creates a litter. It has a lot of different fruits and other things that come off of it. So I object to the tree. I think it's too high. I'd like to see trees, hitting that 25 to 30 foot max height. There's a lot of flowering trees that look really nice that would fit that bill. That was my main concern for the trees.
Perhaps we can make it so that...
We can do it right now. I got it, yeah.
So she's had some experience with her other neighbor, and perhaps now there can be this, and we can get an email that says you're happy with what they're doing, and...
Absolutely. There's really no problem. And just for the record, we had a large, as this gentleman has said, we had a very large, dangerous pine tree which was taken out, but there was also a large cherry tree that was taken out that was damaged and dying, and so that was removed. So that's what I was referring to as the replacement tree. But why not have, if you like flowering trees, we already have we can do another flowering cherry to replace what was there in
It's
effect.
mainly also the height. I don't
Right,
want to see anything that's going to, and I understand maintaining, but maintaining can happen or cannot happen. So
I
I'd
totally
rather
see.
be limited by the choice of tree rather than
Okay.
maintaining. And the only other comment I have is, it's with the units here. I mean, I know they're already there and that they were done before planning because they're air conditioning units. But I do have a little bit of concern that the noise of 4 air conditioning units, so hopefully they can do something there to mitigate that, because I think the village ordinance says 45 decibels, no louder than that at the property line after 8 o'clock, and I don't know how you achieve that with those 4 units, but maybe there's something that can be done to screen it a little better. But I do enjoy my yard, and I don't really want to be listening to the drone of 4 units. Unfortunately, it's there. I wish there was a chance to talk about it first, because it could have gone to the other side of the garage rather than where it is. But that's there now. But maybe there's some way to address the noise that will come off of them.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the response?
I think I'll let our architect talk about that. I wasn't involved on the mechanicals.
Sure. We'll definitely look back into it again. Take a decibel reading or make the neighbors happy the best we can, reasonably to screen that out. My understanding at the time was that it was permitted work, and it was needed to meet those decibel levels, and so we certainly would want to be in compliance.
Or you might see what the specifications are on those
Yes,
units.
the
and what
the
they-
unit won't meet the specifications because no unit is under 60, and that's a 45. 45 at the property line from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m.
So so what you're saying is at the property line that it won't comply?
No, the unit won't comply with 45, but at the property line, it may comply.
Well, that's what I'm
And a lot of shrubbery there may help as well.
Yeah, so-
So just make sure that, I want to make sure everyone understands, it's not the units at 45.
We understand that.
Yeah.
We understand that too, but at the proper, this
Right,
is
okay.
a logarithmic thing, and we need to
Yep.
make them happy is
Exactly.
the point here. We understand it.
Yeah, I just think some screening probably would solve the whole problem.
Yeah, we're on it. We get it.
I'm not trying to be objectionable, I just want to, know that,
Okay.
They may not realize that,
That way.
that you proposed a fence. But that will have right up there.
Yeah.
That's all.
We're looking forward to going to the ARB once we get through this and through the ZBA, but that would include some screening there to help this problem.
Okay. Sheila, do you have any comments, or George?
Yeah,
Caesar, any others?
just put a note in there that says that you're going to be putting your adequate screening to reduce the noise. And
We'll do. It's a new item that's coming up. We will do that. Yeah.
Is there
I'll
something?
just add one note right there. When I met with, I'm sorry, Mrs. Sabatino, she did voice a concern about that, about the noise, and I related to Peter's team, and they did add a board fence proposed. It's not in yet. So there is a board fence right around there to help mitigate sound, which actually does, in my findings, a lot more than plant material, actual wood fencing, solid wood board fencing, which is what they've already put in here. So I think we may already be there. And then we have, yes, our additional planting at the property line. I don't think there's, I think we should definitely be okay with those items.
What is the, I'm just looking, what is the variance for?
It's
Right.
Yeah, we'd like to talk about that.
And the aqueduct buffer.
Oh, which is the
There's a garbage shed, some fencing.
We're relocating the garbage and putting an enclosed garbage shed adjacent to the parking, and there's a turnoff here that was historically used anyway. We're just making it official. So this piece here is not only within the drainage plan, but it's unfortunately lies within the aqueduct setback. So we're eager to get on to the ZBA about that if we can.
Any other comments? Anybody have any issue with sending them on to the ZBA for that? Okay, I think you can go to the ZBA for that and then come back next month with answers to Doug's questions, Mr. and Mrs. Sabatino's and ours. And
Are there any, Doug, are there any outstanding items between you and Mike that need to discussed
No,
while we're here?
they were minor. I spoke with Mike briefly before. I didn't seem to have any issues with them, so.
We're good with that. Okay, looks good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thanks.
So with that, we have a motion to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
You have a card or something?